Welcome to the Clear to Send podcast, a podcast about wireless engineering, where we educate you on Wi-Fi technology, talk about design tips, troubleshooting, interviews, and the tools. Here are your hosts, Roel and Francois.
Hi guys, welcome to a brand new episode of the Clear to Send podcast. I'm here this week alone. Roel couldn't make it, unfortunately, but I'm here with a guest from Canada, Gurpreet Singh. Hi Gurpreet, how are you?
Hey Francois, I'm good, thank you.
So that's your second time on the show. You came in last year talking about spectrum analysis, and you're back today just to share a little bit your Wi-Fi experience. So how are you this morning?
I'm good, thank you so much. Yeah, love to listen to you guys. It's been a pleasure, and really appreciate the stuff that you and Roal have been doing for so many years, and it's amazing.
Thank you. We always appreciate good feedbacks. So how about you tell us, how you got started in Wi-Fi, where you're from, and who you work for, what you do. Just a little bit of background information for everyone to know.
Sure, definitely. I'm currently I'm working for Bell Canada. It's one of the VARs in Canada here. And we deploy, obviously, and my main focus is being as a wireless solution consultant, mainly deploying Wi-Fi solutions from different vendors. Pretty much, I would say we cover Aruba, Cisco, Fortinet, Meraki, Motorola, Extreme / Zebra. So we pretty much touch everything there. And how I entered into Wi-Fi is actually a pretty interesting story. Wasn't planning to. Here's the first thing, but now I definitely enjoy it. It's been amazing, and it was I think in 2012, and actually I was that time I was doing my master's in computer networks, and but I was doing it part time because I was working full time as well, so just couldn't go full time. So I was doing it part time. And in last semester, actually, which was in 2012, what we have to do is actually we are given a topic. And we have to kind of come up with like a little project on that topic and kind of share with the team, and you have to make a report. So it's more like not like a whole thesis kind of thing, but it's just like a small project that you got to make for that semester. Usually the teacher told us that, because our classes used to be in the evening, so from 5 to 8 we used to have our classes once or twice a week kind of thing. So she said that 5 o'clock she'll put all the topics on the table. First come, first serve, you get, and you pick what you like kind of thing. And unfortunately or fortunately that day, and at the time I used to work for a radio station, and I was dealing with an off-air emergency. So obviously, couldn't leave on time. Got delayed by the time we fixed everything, and I reached. There was only one paper left. So there was not much choice.
It was Wi-Fi?
It was actually Wi-Fi security. And I'm like,
wow.
Oh, okay, well, I have no idea what this is. But okay, maybe it's a good thing, right? Because you pick up something that you have no idea on, so you might want to start learning. So that's actually when I started, looking into Wi-Fi. But, here's the key thing. I never actually looked into how Wi-Fi works at that point, because the topic was more on Wi-Fi security. So I started looking more into, how to bypass MAC filters on Wi-Fi, web, what's the problem, WPA, PSK, and those were more of the things that I did. And I think at the time the tools that I used were Backtrack 3 with alpha cards, and I had a couple of Linksys routers. Then I was setting up and then trying to hack them and stuff like that. That was the whole project. But that was the first introduction. And as I dived into it and I learned more, it was amazing. It was actually fun. To do that, and that's how when I started, and in 2013 I started with my current job, and they were looking for somebody who wants to do wireless, and I was like, yeah, I think I enjoy that and I want to do that, and that's it. That's pretty much how it all started. Actually, it was really fun, because then that time I was using, as I said, Backtrack 3, used Aircrack NG and all those tools. It was really interesting.
So did you start working directly into Wi-Fi, or did you do like some networking before?
So actually, I was doing networking up until 2012. I was doing networking for my employer at that time.
Okay.
And I also worked for a small ISP for a year or so to begin with. So yeah, I was focused on networking a lot, and then as I said, Wi-Fi. We at the radio station we didn't have a Wi-Fi that I was managing, but I was again like it was set up by one of the bars a few years back. I can't remember the controller, but I think it was Cisco 500 or something, and that was like really old Cisco APs with like just G on them, no 5 gigahertz. At the time, I obviously didn't understand any of that. I was like, okay, it works. You see the bars, you connect, and it's okay, right? So, and we really never had any much issues because at that time we didn't have that much requirement like what we see now in today's today's environment where people are want to connect via Wi-Fi, and there are a lot of devices out there and stuff. But at that time, nobody really cared. It was just plug in and that's it.
Okay, that's interesting. And then you started to work on Wi-Fi projects with Bell Canada.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely. And that was the first time when I actually when I was doing my research on my project, that's the first time actually I also stumbled into the CWNP program and saw, okay, they do offer this stuff.
So how did you find out about the CWNP program? Did you just like Google it and you found some links about it?
Well, I remember I was looking for some security papers that could understand. So I think there was one white paper they had done at some point, or there was some blog that was on CWNP. And a lot of times I was like, when the flag came out on my head is like, I keep searching, and a lot of times I see the CWNP. I say, okay, let me look at it. What is it? And then when I actually saw it, okay, well, this looks interesting. But at the time, I didn't have the cycles to go through CWNA because as I said, I was working full time and part time I was doing this. So my focus was just to get the project done at that point. So, but I at least realized that this is some, company which is doing Wi-Fi mainly. They're very focused on Wi-Fi and they have different tracks. So I was able to understand that. So when I came to Bell, I knew that's what I wanted to look at. And a couple of projects I did with Bell, they worked out fine. I was doing different vendors, as I said, and at the time I realized that I'm able to get a network up and running, but I don't really understand what I'm doing here. I could go, especially when I come to radio settings. Okay, what do I pick here? Like, do I need to disable this rate? What is that? What does rate mean? And any of that. Like, I had absolutely no clue. So that's when I said, okay, I think I need to know a little bit more. And I started reading that book, CW NA book. And then luckily at that same year, 2013, we actually had a class in Toronto that was taught by Ben Miller. He's one of the CWNEs and author of the CWAP book as well. I think that's where my interest just really took off, like, because I had some really good conversations during the class with him. He also introduced me to some of the blogs like Revolution Wi-Fi, Andrew Arnold's website, and Keith Parsons' website. That's where I started, going on Twitter and start following people, and I guess that's how I met you as well. So yeah, it was fun.
Okay, so did you find that because sometimes when you work for a VAR, like they're pushing you to get the vendor certifications, but did you find that your employer like supported you in your CWNP studies and training and all of that?
Well, it was more like, so you're right, absolutely right. That's usually the case with most of the vendors, and that was with us too, because obviously there was a push to get a certain vendor. And at that time we were doing a lot of Aruba, so there was a little bit of push on Aruba. But then at the same time, when I realized that I need this basics, so when I went to my manager, and my manager was a very amazing guy, and he's like, yeah, if you think this is what you need, then yeah, sure, go for it. But at the time, like there were a lot of like we could not get a lot of vendor neutral trainings. But at least I was able to, get the books that I wanted, and I was able to, write the exams that they would take care of me and all that stuff. So they were very supportive in that sense. It's just that I had to put in my own time instead of, because if you're actually on a vendor training, it will be during the daytime, and you don't have to worry about your projects. But if you're doing this other stuff, which is like your own development kind of thing, but then you're at that time you're kind of on your own, you're reading your book, self-study based and all that. So yeah, that was my morning and evenings, usually reading the CWNP stuff.
Okay, that's good. That's good. That's good to hear. All right. Okay, and then you continue down the CWNP track because you're now CWNE, right?
Yep. Yeah. That was. It was. I just couldn't get my mind off it. I was because every time I would pick a book and I would learn something new. Actually, honestly, I still do, because there's so much to know, and you just can't know it all. And also sometimes it's hard to even retain a lot of stuff, right? Because it's so much information out there, and with different protocols coming out, everything is different. And then
you mean Wi-Fi 6?
Absolutely. So yeah. Well, I haven't touched a lot on that AX stuff yet. I have obviously been following others and checking out some of the webinars, and I've read I've also read I think one of the white papers that Dave came out with, I guess. So yeah, I know they are doing a lot of road shows and webinars, so I do try to keep up to it. So yeah, but like, the more you read, it's good, but I think retention is a big challenge, and also to kind of keep track of all the different vendors, because they all have their own proprietary stuff where they're doing things differently, and they will call things differently. So
do you have like a resource or tools that helps you along the way becoming a better Wi-Fi engineer? Or I would say, like, in your journey to becoming CWNE, did you find like a good resource or some tools that helped you to learn more about the Wi-Fi technology, or maybe challenged you a little bit more? Maybe a project that you worked on that helped you?
Well, projects definitely help you along the lane, because there are different projects, and the customer needs are different. So that's definitely a thing that helps you learn. But I think for me, it was more like, as I said, like, it was the self-study was, and then luckily I had most of my tools. So let's say if I was working on my design, I already have a copy of Ekahau, so I could, and I was already doing design for my customers. So now I could be more confident, and I could, understand things more better, because I still remember when I did my first survey with an Ekahau, I think it was a version 5 back then. I didn't understand most of it, to be honest with you. Like, I understand signal strength, and I could understand SNR, and that's pretty much how I went. Now, obviously, with the understanding the track, I could understand, okay, how important the spectrum is, how important your airtime utilization is, and what's a CCI, why would you care for that, all that stuff, right? So obviously, you read stuff and then you go deploy it at the customer and you see the difference, and that's when you know that you're doing the right thing, right? Because you're getting good feedback. The users are never complaining, and they're happy with what they have. So,
yeah, sometimes I have the the more you know, the more you want to understand how it works, and sometimes Absolutely. I have the opposite feeling where I feel like looking at the stats and looking at the everything, it feels like it's not going to work properly. But after that, you go on site and it's working properly, because Wi-Fi it's such a resilient technology that sometimes it works like when you don't expect it to work. So
that's very true.
This opposite feeling sometimes.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
But it's the more you do, the more you become confident, and then when you do design and then you see that everything is working well, the user is having a good experience on the Wi-Fi, you just to build up your confidence, and it's always a good feeling for sure.
Yeah, because I think now, like, most of the gurus out there, I've sent them. I've heard them preach. It's all about. I think Devin he puts in one of his webinars where he says user experience is the king, and I think that's so true. And now also I've heard like a new term that I've heard. They talk about so quality of experience that they're measuring now. So like QE. That's. Yeah, exactly. So that's the key, right? So what's the user, and at the end of the day, how the user, it could be as simple as he's just opening up his laptop, going to a browser, and what's his experience now? Now, obviously it's not just Wi-Fi. It would depend on the website that he's going to, his WAN connection, and all that as well. But yeah, I think that's the key these days. If end user is getting his stuff done and being productive, and that's what the companies want. That's what the users want.
Yeah, exactly. I'm huge on the user experience as well, because like at the end of the day, that's kind of like what the like we're not designing Wi-Fi networks for us, right? We're designing Wi-Fi networks for the users, right?
Absolutely.
So at the end of the day, that's what matters really. I know it's not easy to. I often ask myself the question, like, what's my purpose here? What am I doing really? And
Right.
it's when you do Wi-Fi, it's not really easy to find a purpose, right? But I always come back to, I'm doing this for the users so they can get their job done, or so they can have a easier life or whatever. So it's at the end of the day, I think that's what's the most important. And I've tried to incorporate that into my choices, in my design choices, and also when I validate the Wi-Fi network, I always incorporate that in my validation as well.
So true.
Sometimes I've had customer telling me, "Oh, I don't really want to pay for validation. I mean, if you do it good, if you do your design good, it's supposed to work well." But they're expecting the validation to just be, a site survey to check the signal strength. I usually do a little bit more than that. I try to check the user experience, right? Try to see how they use the Wi-Fi. Try to see if their applications are working well. I also validate, AP installations and stuff. Obviously, I validate the signal strength and the Wi-Fi metrics, but I try to go a little step further, just to make sure that at the end of the day, what really matters is working well.
Absolutely.
And it's not always easy to do. Well, in my case, I can be a little bit more flexible, right? But in your cases, I'm guessing maybe your employer just asking you to go and do a quick site survey and then come back.
Yeah, well, because a lot of times the solutions are being sold, right? So we're just delivering, because I'm part of the delivery team. So we're just delivering what's asked of us. So yeah, to the point, at some point your hands are tied where you're like, well, I would like to do a couple more things, because this might not, as you said, like, yeah, maybe the signal strength could be the best, but the problem is still. And I think I remember like that was one of the triggers that actually helped me focus more on the understanding Wi-Fi piece, was because I remember I was it was at one of these warehouses where they were having issues with their scanner guns and their VoIP phones. And at that time, to be honest, like, again, didn't have a lot of background on that. So I did like a quick site survey that I was asked of. And then, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, yeah, the signal strength looks green. That means it's okay, right? Well,
green is good.
Exactly, right? So that's what I was thinking. And back in 2013 when I was working on that, and I kind of feel ashamed of that stuff, is I'm like, oh my God, like I didn't look at any of the stuff that I should have looked at that point, but didn't know any better that time. So you're right, absolutely. It's signal strength is just one part of the requirement that needs to be met, but then there are others as well. And then plus, like if you just done a site survey and that site survey was not like with a Spectrum. Like I know now Ekahau comes up with the Sidekick and, it has an inbuilt, but a lot of times people are still using, like I still don't have a Sidekick. I still use a NIC 300 for my site survey, and I have a DBX on the side. So if I don't plug that in, I won't get that information. That's so critical.
Man, we need to get you hooked up on something for Christmas.
That would be nice for sure. No, I've been already requesting. Let's see if that comes through, and that would be definitely a great tool to have. Definitely.
Tell them to call me, and
we'll do.
Back
So no, that's and obviously a lot of people also think sometimes Wi-Fi gets a hit too, is because so Wi-Fi is getting a black eye just because it's the last mile, you will say, or the last connection, you would say, because if let's say if as a user doesn't know any better. So I think educating users is also a big part of this, like or even the customers in that sense, because you could have a great signal and great connection on your device, but let's say if the infrastructure that your Wi-Fi sits on is not it's not configured the way it should be, like your WAN links or your LAN, the way it's been routed and stuff like that, you'll have issues, right? So well, that's what I tell my customers. Look at the Wi-Fi as an overlay on your network. It's not like extension. It's a kind of extension, but still look at it as an overlay, because if you have any other issues that are happening in your network, that will affect the Wi-Fi directly, right? So if your DNS responses are slow, or your DHCP is taking time or whatever, the user will, get that, and he'll think it's the Wi-Fi, but that's not the whole story, right? So
yeah. So many PCs can impact the end user experience, the end user Wi-Fi experience.
Exactly, and then the Wi-Fi gets blamed, I guess, right?
I went to a stadium a couple of weeks back, and you would connect to the Wi-Fi network, and then the captive portal. It would take like 2 minutes, 3 minutes to load the captive portal, right? And then once you were on, the Wi-Fi was great, like super fast and super good, but it would take like 3 minutes to get to the captive portal. So, I mean, for the user at the end, some people would say, "Oh, Wi-Fi doesn't work."
Exactly.
Wi-Fi sucked.
Well, it's the captive portal. God knows where it's hosted and what it's running on and stuff like that, right? So
maybe it gets loaded at the beginning of the game because everyone comes to the stadium, so they didn't think about that, or a whole bunch of things can be at play.
Yeah. No, very true.
I agree with you. It's not only the Wi-Fi. Have to think about that's why wireless engineers, it's fun, because when I started my career, I started to work as a support network engineer, and then our job was always to prove that it wasn't a network. So we had to, when it wasn't a network, I mean, sometimes it was a network, but when it wasn't, sometimes we would get tickets and from the support team, and it wasn't really from the network, and we couldn't just transfer them to the server or whoever was responsible for it. We had to justify ourselves that it wasn't the network. So we became really good at other technologies.
Can understand. I know. That's a good thing to know, right? Because end of the day, it's like we Wi-Fi engineers, like we definitely need to know our stuff, but then you also kind of need to understand other stuff because it's all integrated at the end of the day. So if you understand, that just makes your life a little more easier. Then at least you're not a lost cow when you're in that situation where you're like, I have no idea what I'm talking about here, and and I know my piece is okay, but then I can't really point finger on like I know something is broken, but I don't know what. So if you have that extra knowledge, for sure, you're at least able to point them in the right direction. Because what I've seen in the field is, how I look at it, and anytime there's a problem, there are only two ways of approaching that problem. One is saying, this is how I set it up. Look at it. This is perfect as per the best practices. So not my problem. You take care of it. So it's like passing the ball kind of thing. But in that, I think the person who would suffer a lot would be the customer, right? So if you have that second approach, where I would say you're not just able to point finger that, okay, I've done it right, but then also kind of give him like a direction that I think go look into this. So end of the day, you're trying to, so let it be me or my network guy or whoever that server person is, we're all working together to make sure the whole solution works. If you'll have a happy customer if you all have that mindset of kind of end of the day saying, okay, we'll make it work. Not just saying my piece is good,
Exactly. So exactly when I have an issue like that, I always try to keep the quote from Henry Ford in mind. He says, "Don't find fault, find a remedy."
Absolutely.
It's kind of like the same idea, right?
Exactly.
You can change the past anyway, right? So let's just act on what we can change, the present and the future, and then let's just make the situation better.
Very true.
I wanted to ask you something related to that. Oh yeah, coming back to that point of knowing the rest of the other PCs. I think working as a support engineer helped me to better understand the rest of the infrastructure. And then when I became to do Wi-Fi, when I decided to do Wi-Fi, I understood the network very much, right? I understood how the basic protocol works: DNS, DHCP, ARP, you name it. So. And this helps me every day. Like when you talk to people, you can better understand what's going on, how it's working. You can interact with other people. You can even challenge other people.
Yes.
So So it's overall it's a very good idea. Most people working most Wi-Fi engineers come from the networking side, so they usually know a lot about the network.
Yes.
But you also have people coming from the radio side.
True.
And I think it's more challenging for them because they have to learn the network.
Yep, absolutely.
And it's a big piece, right?
Yep. It is. Because Wi-Fi, as we said already, like it's sitting on your network, so you need to understand. And again, without a good solid foundation, like you can't build a building if you don't have a good foundation. So it's same applies here too. If you don't have a strong network infrastructure to support your Wi-Fi, doesn't matter how good your Wi-Fi access points are, they're not going to work. So it's more like, okay, I put AC access points, but my switch is 100 meg. Is it going to work? Well, no. So those are some of the things that need to be kept in mind. Like you need to have a good solid foundation, and then you build Wi-Fi on it.
So something I wanted to talk about, Gurpreet, is more about you work on very large scale deployments. How do you approach like a deployment of a Wi-Fi for like hundreds of locations? Like how do you make it happen so it doesn't take 2 years? Do you automate some things? Like how did you approach those projects?
Well, to be honest with you, definitely we try to automate as much as we can, and that's something that I've tried to started this year more to kind of learn more on scripting and stuff. And this year, this project started kind of last year. We're almost done with this one. So it's one of the food chains that we're deploying for them, and we're doing around 1,500 stores approximately for them. So for these guys, we were using actually Cisco Meraki as a solution.
Okay.
Same thing, like we definitely used automation in terms of, so we used actually Python to kind of interact with the API that Meraki has to kind of create networks automatically and also push. So let's say I know, for example, this week I'm deploying 50 stores. So what I'll do is probably I'll have an Excel sheet ready for that 50 stores. And the key here is to make sure that what you put in that Excel sheet has, is accurate, and also has all the information that you need on your dashboard. Examples like I'll put like the store number, that's going to be my network name. And then you'll have what devices with the serial numbers that are going to go into this particular network. The tags that you're going to put in there, and tags are mainly for reporting in Meraki, so that's what you put in there. And so again, now you have a template that's your golden config, that as you call. And then when you run your script, basically what happens is it just takes this Excel sheet. It's all the networks are created, and all the associated APs or other devices that you want on that network are actually added to that network. And now when the tech is actually on site at the night, when he's doing he's running his cables and getting the APs on, he just plugs in, and as soon as he plugs in, it goes to the cloud, looks for the config and gets the config, and voila, it's up and running, right? So that's one of the things. And I think the key, I think, when you do any large scale deployment is, I think, to have a good proof of concept before. So the rollout actually took us less than 6 months, but the POC also almost took us that much. Not that much, but at least 3 to 4 months, because you want to make sure your process is smooth. You tested different scenarios that could happen in the field. So it's like more pains you take at the beginning, lesser issues you run into at the end. And I think that's the big one, is because when you're actually at the end, I mean, and in the process of rolling out a big project like that, a small issue can really become big very soon. Because let's say if you didn't think of one scenario that might just happen, and you've already scheduled like these thousands of sites to happen in next 6 months, if you miss a week, guess what? It's all like, rolls over to other stuff, right? And pretty quickly the issue becomes
snowball effect.
Absolutely. So I think the key is the testing part, like in the beginning, or the proof of concept part, where you test as many scenarios as you can. And I personally do most of them by myself whenever I can. Like I'm even like I'll do visits to the stores to see a couple of. So I'll look at like few different stores because they all could be different. Now obviously I cannot touch all of them. They're all over the country, but most of them I'll try to understand. Okay, what could I run into when I'm because some might have a different infrastructure than the others, and then test all
Different
these
number of APs.
Absolutely, different number of APs and all that. So yeah, we we test a lot in the beginning. I think that's probably that's the best approach that I've and obviously it's more been like you learn as you go kind of thing. This was a big learning for me to like spend as much as time in the beginning, I guess. So that's the key takeaway I would say, to be honest.
So planning, right?
Planning, big time.
Okay. So from an RF standpoint, like are all the stores, do they all have the same layout, or did you have different layouts you needed to work with, and did you come up with different like AP placement per layout? How did you
Yes.
you handle?
So, yeah.
Okay.
So pretty much. So again, we so rather than just sending a text saying, I think 3 APs this store, so just put whatever you want. So rather than that, we took an approach of saying, okay, fine, we won't be able to. It's a big deployment, and it was not. We're not supposed to really do like an actual site survey for each and every of this location.
Yeah.
So we said at least. Do some sort of prediction design. So then what I had done, this was part of my initial visits to the sites to kind of get some measurements of a store. For example, attenuation measurements when they have a TV, or they have a firewall, how much attenuation does it happen, or they have a fountain for the drinks and stuff, and then they have a kitchen. How does the kitchen behave? So I did some physical site surveys were done by me. And I think the sample was about 6 or 8 stores to understand how the propagation is in the stores, is these kind of stores. And obviously they are different. Some of them have a basement, some of them have a extra floor, or that kind of stuff, right? So but at least that kind of gave me a baseline of what it looks like. And then taking that baseline and then doing like now for the main rollout, we were able to kind of say, okay, you can place APs here, because now so those that baselines were actually kind of imported into Ekahau and kind of see, okay, how my prediction is going to look like. So it's more like a predictive survey in those sense, but not. Now I know they had it. It has its own drawbacks, because sometimes the map could not be as accurate as you could expect. You don't get much information on the ceiling. So maybe there's no drop ceiling. It's 25 feet suddenly. So then how do you deal with that? So in those scenarios, we come up with and that was again part of the plan. So let's say if I have a tech who goes on site and he suddenly noticed that, okay, he can mount it here. So what are his options? So there was a map provided to these techs to see, okay, this is so you got to follow the AP placement that we provide you. If you find issues, for example, your ceiling is too high, okay, then you use a L bracket or and stuff like that. So those were like the options, those were given. So different options. So they kind of go by. And the reason to have these options is because when you start doing these rollouts, they're like the volume is too high. So at a night, we could be doing like 8 stores. And it could be a bad day where all the 8 sites have no false ceiling. So I cannot be talking to 8 different techs, right? So that's why.
I thought you could.
Well,
underestimating yourself, Gurpreet.
Yeah, I guess. So that's the thing, right? So those are the things that you want to avoid. So so do as much as documentation for the techs and also for the bridge captains. So again, like this is all part of the planning. So planning is not just your technical stuff, but also your procedures, your methods of procedures, where you're creating like these documents for the techs or for the bridge captains who are running the bridges at the night, and also the PM team. So everybody kind of understands. So I think the big piece here is also the education, not just for the customer, but for your own teams. So we did some whiteboard sessions with all the key team members to kind of understand. Okay, so this is how the design is going to look like on a bigger scale. That's how we're going to deployed, and then we had some question and answer sessions where people had questions, and we were able to help them understand.
Address.
Yeah, exactly. So
before it starts, yeah.
Exactly. So as I said, like a lot of time was spent before we start rolling out, and when we only say go when we're confident that okay, everybody knows what they're doing, and then we go.
Yeah, because you're going to be dealing, if it's across the country, you're going to be dealing with different installers, right? It's probably going to be one, different installers for pretty much almost all installations. So
yes,
you need good processes. Yeah,
definitely.
What are some issues you ran across during this project, like that you wouldn't have run across if it was just a small scale project?
Well, I think because, as I said, like there are a lot of big pieces to it. So some of the challenges that you could run into is, I would say, the big part was, for example, like let's say the internet connections. So sometimes if those connections are, like as I said, like not fast enough, the user experience is not the best that they're expecting it to get. So yeah, we got a new Wi-Fi in the store, but yeah, it doesn't look that, the experience is not the best. You know what I mean? Like now obviously, as from that big scale projects, you can't really go and test, as you were saying, that we could not do testing. I think that was the big thing that I would want to do, but then again, like it's not scalable a lot of times when you're running with such big projects. Unless the customer agrees and gives us more time and the dough as well. So, so it's, I think those were the few things. In a smaller project, it's different, right? Like you always have the cycles to kind of go back and test everything as you and me just spoke about, right? Where you want to do end user experience and test each and every application that you possibly might be using and stuff like that. So I think that's one thing that is a bit of a challenge when you're doing big projects.
Yeah, so you cannot do really custom designs and you cannot really do custom validations.
Absolutely.
So you're going to have to find a solution that will be good for like 90% of the cases.
Yep.
And then go with it.
Exactly. So we were, as I said, like the initial part we were able to do, as I said, we were able to, kind of baseline it. So that part I think was pretty okay. I was happy with the whole thing overall. But yeah, like you're right, like for validation, I have to come up with some ideas to kind of see how can I make this any better. Now, to be honest, like most of the vendors, like you kind of can assume at least the Wi-Fi piece of it. Like you can see what's this user's connection with my AP. So based on that, I can kind of predict some stuff. To be honest, so I will just randomly go and check. Okay, different clients and different, how are they connecting and what's. But then sometimes even that falls apart. To be honest, because this could not even be a user inside their store. This could be some outsider sitting in his car, and I'm thinking, oh wow, his connection looks bad, but I have no way of checking or validating if he's actually in store or out, kind of thing, right? So there are some challenges for sure. I
think vendors will be able to provide in the future maybe more insight on validation, especially for those large scale deployments.
Yes.
Because obviously it's better if you can go on site and then get a feel for yourself. But in those situations where you have a lot of stores to deploy in a short amount of time, like it's not doable.
It's not, yeah.
So maybe with the AI and machine learning platforms, maybe the vendors will be able to provide a little bit more background information, so it could give us a little bit more insight on how the Wi-Fi is doing.
Yep. No, I think that's a very, very good point for sure. Looking forward to make that process better for sure for the next one.
Yeah, that's very interesting. One question I was going to ask you is, how did you decide, which RF settings you were going to use, like transmit power, channel width, channels to use? Did you just use the RM system, or did you just selected the pool of channels you wanted to use everywhere, or how did you make that decision? Because I'm guessing it's not an easy one if you're deploying across a few 1,500 stores.
Absolutely. So yeah, we were looking at like the safest one that we can use, obviously, and then we were able to take some of. We decided not to use DFS in this case was because we didn't know where the stores could be. In that sense, some stores could have been actually at the airports. So DFS was obviously not an option there. And then because they were not like big stores, so that made the decision a bit easier, because if you don't have big stores, then you can still the max APs you might end up will be like 3 or maybe 4. I think 4 was probably the max. So, but anyways, yeah. So if you have 4, I tried to use like 20 as a channel width, and then DFS were not used, and tried to use the power. But I would, as I said, like did a couple of testing with those initial stores, and then came up with some power settings, and then that we rolled out on that. And so far, to be honest, we didn't hear a lot of noise on that part. Like the user experience, most of it like came out okay. And again, like that's a process. That's like something that you constantly monitor stuff, right? So you go back on the dashboard, keep checking, see what you get, and then do it that way.
So the process of checking from the dashboard to get a sense of how the Wi-Fi is doing, did you try to automate that part as well?
No, that part actually wasn't automated, because this mainly the main stuff that was done was done by me was actually the initial part when I was doing a lot of testing. So when we took like these 6 to 8 stores, we actually went ahead and also deployed these stores. And then I did like visit back to these stores in physically to do a couple of site surveys, validations, and check for the user experience and check for the captive portal and all that stuff to see how that's coming out on different devices, obviously, because it's a restaurant and anybody would kind of walk in, right? So we that part was done initially. So that was all like physical visits and checking more, and dashboard was more like to see how many clients. And actually, I was using some reportings to just understand how many peak users are coming in, what are the times that they're coming in, to understand it more better, and stuff like that. So yeah, that was part of the initial actually setup.
Or maybe that's something you can automate for the end of the project.
Yeah,
maybe in the morning after the install, it gives you like a summary of the day and how the connections. I don't know if you can do that with Meraki with the API, but it would be cool.
No, definitely. No, honestly, like that's one thing that I think I really want to kind of understand more. I've never been a programming person, to be honest. This one that we did was very basic. So yeah, but definitely want to start getting into a little more automation. And I think it solves a couple of problems. It obviously saves you time. That's a big one. But I think it also what it does is it actually takes the human error out of the pitch equation, right? Like it's not just fast; it's also accurate. So I think that's very important.
As long as you don't screw up your scripting.
Absolutely. Well, more than the scripting, I think it's your data that you're getting in. So obviously most of the, like let's say in our case, we use an Excel sheet as an input, right? So yeah, that has to be spot on, right? If you miss there, definitely, you miss.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, anyway, Gurpreet, that was a very good conversation. Do you want to add anything on the, deploying Wi-Fi at scale?
No, I think we covered most of it. I think it was a great conversation for sure.
All right, perfect. So, well, where can people find you online if they want to get in touch with you?
So I can be reached on my Twitter. It's at new to Wi-Fi, and
you need to change that, huh?
Well, you know what? I'll to be honest, the reason I put that there was the whole idea of when you and I started my blog was I wanted to give people a website where if they're new to Wi-Fi, where they come. That was the idea behind it, to be honest.
Okay.
So that's why I kind of keep it. I know, like, I am not new to Wi-Fi anymore. Yeah. Well, not even marketing. It's more like, because when I started, I wanted to look for, good material right away. Because, when you start new to Wi-Fi, for example, you start searching stuff, you'll get a lot of vendor stuff. And that's not always what you want to look at initially when you're new to Wi-Fi, right? Or you're pretty new to the technology. You want to look for something who's, so I haven't got a chance to work on that piece, but my goal was to kind of have this website where I could have links to good blogs where people are, where all the experts are putting their stuff and giving real valuable information. Also have sites like, CWNP where they have their videos Keith's YouTube channel, where all these great presentations come on and new discussions come on. Podcasts like yours, like Keith's, so that like you're up and running. It took me a year to find the community, to understand, okay, this is how it is and this is how it needs to be done. So I don't want people to waste that 1 year.
Yeah, that's a good idea, actually. Yeah, because I got introduced to the Wi-Fi community by a friend of mine. But I mean, if in your case you just did everything yourself, right? You just found out about the CWNP program. You started to follow people on Twitter, and it took you a year.
Exactly. So this, if I would have had like somebody kind of walk me through
Jump
what I've
start.
been, yeah, exactly. That would help, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, can I link your website anyway to the show notes?
Sure.
Okay, I'll link your website, and then I'll link your Twitter profile if people want to reach out to you.
Sure, definitely. Always willing to help. Like, I got a lot of help from this community, so if any little that I can do, I'll be more than happy.
All right. Thank you, Gurpreet. Thank you for coming on. Come back anytime you want.
Sure.
And we'll be happy to have you on. Thank you for sharing your experience.
Yep.
If you enjoyed the episode, make sure you share it with your friends and family. Share the love. And
Definitely.
then you can also review us on iTunes and comment on the show notes if you want to hear about other topics. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch back with you next week. Bye-bye.